All right, welcome back for another deep dive with us.
Glad to be here.
This week's a little different. Well, actually a lot different.
Yeah.
It's gotten kind of personal. You sent us a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, a pretty interesting mix this time.
A news quiz recording, some showbiz news, even a personal conversation.
Yeah, and it all kind of ties together, I think.
Yeah, wouldn't you say the overall theme this week is like this feeling of unease?
Definitely, yeah, like a sense of uncertainty about a lot of things.
Like globally,
Yeah, globally, politically.
personally.
Oh, for sure, personally, especially with that AFC Championship game coming up.
Don't even get me started on that yet.
We'll get there, we'll get there.
Can't even think about it.
But yeah, we're seeing this unease reflected in the news and pop culture. And yeah, definitely in your own life.
For sure. And it's not just like a vague feeling. There's some pretty concrete stuff happening that's fueling this unease.
Right, like the inauguration this week. That seemed to be a big one for you.
Huge. I mean, I couldn't even watch it.
You mentioned that, yeah.
It just felt, I don't know, wrong somehow.
And then you've got the executive orders coming out. Talk of pardons.
Oh, the pardons. Don't even get me started.
It's a lot to process, for sure.
It is. And I think it all points to this, like you said, this erosion of trust.
Exactly. Like we're seeing this distrust in institutions playing out everywhere.
In the news, you mean?
Yeah, in the news, like even the national FOP, the police union.
Right. They were big supporters.
They endorsed him, but now they're publicly regretting that decision.
Wow, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, it's a pretty big deal.
What made them change their minds?
It seems like it's connected to the pardons, specifically the pardons for those involved in the January 6th events.
Oh, right. That was a whole other can of worms.
It was, and it seems like this was the final straw for a lot of people, even those who had been on board before.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, this whole situation really makes you think about how we engage with politics,
Right, like how do we participate when we fundamentally disagree with what's going on?
Exactly. Do we boycott things like the inauguration to show our disapproval?
Right.
Or do we participate to try and make our voices heard?
It's a tough question.
I mean, I remember you saying that if you were in Barack Obama's shoes, you wouldn't have gone to the inauguration.
Yeah, I wouldn't have.
But there's also the argument that by attending, you're somehow legitimizing these, harmful ideologies.
Exactly. And we see that perspective from people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Right. She's been very vocal about that.
Yeah, and it's a valid point.
It is. And it's not just some abstract debate either. There are real consequences to these political decisions.
Absolutely.
I mean, you mentioned that story about the Latina woman who voted for,
Yeah, and now she's afraid for her family because of the stance on immigration.
exactly. It's scary stuff.
It is, and it really highlights the power of rhetoric and the responsibility that leaders have.
To choose their words carefully.
Exactly, to think about the impact of their words on people's lives.
Well, maybe we need something a little lighter for a minute.
Yeah, a change of pace might be good.
Let's talk about pop culture, shall we?
Sure, what's on your mind?
Well, we got this benefit concert for the wildfire victims in L.A. Pretty impressive lineup.
Oh yeah, who's playing?
Lady Gaga, Stevie Nicks, Billie Eilish, even Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Earth, Wind, and Fire for a wildfire benefit.
I know, a little on the nose, maybe.
Maybe just a tad.
But anyway, it got me thinking about how pop culture can be this unifying force, especially music.
Right, it can bring people together in times of crisis, offer some solace, raise awareness.
And sometimes it even taps into our cultural identities,
Yeah, for sure.
Like with Wayne Osmond passing away this week.
Oh, right, one of the Osmonds.
Yeah, they were that famous Mormon family singing group.
I remember them, they were huge.
They actually started as a barbershop quartet. Did you know that?
Really? I had no idea.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
It is, those family singing groups are a fascinating part of American musical tradition.
Like the Osmonds, the Jackson Five.
Even those local barbershop quartets you mentioned.
They often represent specific cultural or religious backgrounds.
And offer a sense of belonging and familiarity.
Exactly. And speaking of belonging and familiarity, can we talk about this AFC Championship game?
Oh boy, here we go.
I am a diehard Chiefs fan, and I am not okay.
You're feeling pretty anxious about it, huh?
Anxious? I'm a wreck.
Well, it's a big game.
It is, but I think my anxiety goes beyond just typical fan nerves.
You think it's connected to that overall sense of unease we've been talking about?
Absolutely. It's like everything is feeding into this one giant ball of worry.
And focusing it all on this game.
Pretty much.
I understand you've got Josh Allen to contend with. He's a formidable opponent.
He's a beast. And then I'm worried about McDuffie, Pacheco.
Are they injured?
Not exactly, but they haven't been playing at their best.
And you're worried that'll hurt the Chiefs' chances.
Of course I am.
I see you're really invested in the narrative surrounding this game.
What do you mean?
Well, it's not just about the players. It's about the strategies, the perceived villains.
Like Josh Allen.
Exactly. And even the fear of unfair officiating.
Oh, the refs. Don't even get me started.
Especially with that roughing the passer controversy lately.
Ugh, that rule is a nightmare.
It seems like those rules are constantly changing.
They are. And, it all kind of reminds me of those audio clips you shared of Europeans critiquing American culture.
Oh, yeah. What did you think of those?
It's fascinating how they see us, from our obsession with flags to our healthcare system.
It's eye-opening, isn't it?
It is. They don't hold back.
They don't, but it's important to hear those perspectives.
Absolutely, even when they're uncomfortable.
Because it forces us to confront how we see ourselves versus how the rest of the world sees us.
Right. And those can be two very different things.
They can, and that's where the real learning happens.
I agree, and I think that's a good place to pause for now.
Okay, sounds good.
We'll pick this back up in part 2.
Looking forward to it.
It's funny, though, some of the American responses in those clips, they're pretty defensive.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you're getting pretty overweight yourselves.
Right.
Or, be glad we're the world police and not China.
It's understandable to feel defensive, I think, when our culture is being critiqued. You want to protect your identity, but I think it's important to at least try to be open to different perspectives.
Yeah, that's true.
Remember these conversations about national identity?
Yeah.
They're happening all over the world. It's not just us. And I think it's a chance to reflect on our place, in the grand scheme of things.
That's a good point. You know what it strikes me is that this whole deep dive has been about different perspectives.
Yeah.
In politics, pop culture, even sports, it all ties back to this feeling of unease and how we're each trying to make sense of it.
Exactly. And in a world that's, increasingly polarized.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
The ability to, to understand and even empathize with different perspectives, I think that's crucial.
It's hard, though, isn't it?
It is. But let's take a break from the serious stuff for a second.
Yep.
You shared some of your favorite dad jokes from that book.
Oh, yeah.
Past week, next week, misadventures.
I gotta say, I chuckled at a few of those puns.
A few of them made me groan.
Hey, some people appreciate a good pun,
Okay, maybe not, but you're right. Sometimes a little humor is exactly what you need.
Especially when things feel so heavy.
Exactly. And, you're hitting on another important point here.
Right.
Humor, even if it's cheesy, it can be a really powerful tool.
For what?
For dealing with stress and anxiety.
I can see that.
It helps us take a step back,
From all the seriousness.
Right. Find those moments of joy. There's a reason why people say laughter is the best medicine.
Yeah, it really can be. So where does all this leave us? We've got political turmoil, cultural clashes, my own personal anxieties about a silly football game.
And dad jokes.
And dad jokes. Right. Where do we go from here?
Well, I think it means we're living in a complex and ever-changing world.
Yeah, no kidding.
One that can often feel overwhelming.
Understatement of the century.
But I think it also means that, we have ways to navigate these challenges.
Like what?
Well, through critical thinking, seeking out diverse perspectives, finding humor in the chaos, even connecting with others who share our anxieties and passions.
Like at that book club you're always raving about.
Yeah, exactly. Those shared experiences, they can really help us feel less alone, I think.
Less alone in the face of all this uncertainty.
Exactly, because the world can feel pretty isolating sometimes.
It can.
But connecting with others, whether it's through music, sports, even, engaging in thoughtful discussions like this one,
right,
it can be a real source of strength and resilience.
That's what you found in your book club, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's a chance to engage with people who have different viewpoints and expand my own understanding.
That's so important, especially these days.
It is. It's easy to get stuck in those echo chambers,
Where you only hear from people who agree with you.
Exactly. And that's something we need to actively address.
So what do we do?
Well, that brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with.
Okay, I'm listening.
In a world of increasing polarization, how can we cultivate a sense of curiosity and empathy towards those who hold different perspectives?
That's a good question.
It's something we can all work on.
In our personal lives and as a society.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that even when we disagree, there's often common ground to be found.
Yeah. I can see that.
And I think that understanding can lead to, more productive and compassionate dialogue.
This deep dive has been quite a journey. I think you've given us a lot to think about.
It has been my pleasure.
Thanks for joining us. And remember, you can always share your own thoughts and reflections with us on social media.
We love hearing from you.
It's wild how this conversation has gone from global politics to, my own personal anxieties about a football game.
Yeah, it's been quite a range.
We've talked about inaugurations and pardons, benefit concerts and barbershop quartets.
Even dad jokes.
Oh, the dad jokes.
But I think it all ties back to that initial feeling of unease you described. It's present in your own life, but it also reflects what's happening in the world around us.
Yeah, it's both personal and global at the same time.
Exactly. And we've seen how things like music, humor, community, these can all offer ways to cope with that unease.
And maybe even find some joy in the midst of it all.
Right, because even when things feel uncertain, there are still things to appreciate and connect with.
And I think those cultural critiques we talked about, they fit in too.
How so?
Well, they force us to look at ourselves, to question our assumptions about who we are and how we're perceived.
That's a valuable exercise, even when it's uncomfortable.
It is. It's all about expanding our understanding of the world and our place in it.
Absolutely. And recognizing that there's always more to learn, more perspectives to consider.
And embracing that complexity can be tough, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, this has been a truly fascinating deep dive.
It has.
Thanks for helping us make sense of it all.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, thanks for sharing your week with us.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in.
Keep exploring these ideas, keep asking questions, and keep connecting with others.
Because even in a world full of chaos and uncertainty,
there's still so much to discover and appreciate.
You remember,
you're not alone in feeling this way.
We're all in this together.
Until next time.